My name is Pastor Curt. I'm one of the pastors around here. We are in a series called Sound Mind. A series called Sound Mind, which we're going to talk about Jesus' perspective on mental health, biblical mental health. What does it mean when we say that God wants us to have a sound mind? What does it mean when we say God says, "My peace I give you"? What does it mean when God says, "Blessed are those"? Or the Greek word's makuros, he means continually happy. Does God actually want us to live with peace, with happiness, and with a sound mind? We're going to start here in the book of Mark. If you got your sermon notes, you got them here. There's also a little page in the booklet we've handed out to you. We're in Mark chapter 1. And what's interesting about Mark chapter 1 is that Mark starts his gospel in a way that no other gospel writer does. John starts very philosophically, explaining the nature of Jesus. Matthew and Luke start with the beginning story of Jesus. And Mark starts in Capernaum. What's interesting about Capernaum is it's starting at the moment of Jesus' greatest success. If you want to know what the context of our passage is Mark starts with the stress of success. One of the things that can cause us great stress in life is when we do well. One of the things that can cause us great stress in life is when our expectations grow because of the success around us. Does anyone remember third grade? Anyone here? If you're a third grader, you should raise your hand, hopefully. I mean, third grade was awesome. Remember, you just get up, they'd give you a bowl of cereal, they'd march you off to class. I mean, it wasn't really to fourth grade that I started to realize that not passing these tests was going to end up with me being in a van under the bridge down by the river. You know, I just went to school. You remember recess? Every kid's favorite class, and I would come home, and then you had only 3 channels, but they'd always show a Scooby-Doo. Does anyone know? You'd watch one cartoon. It was a rerun. You'd seen it a million times, you know. But there was something very simple about that. And then slowly but surely, 4th grade, 5th grade, middle school, high school, the pressures of life build on you. This is where Mark starts his gospel. So sometimes we think that Jesus was had this failure of existence. He had just these 12 ragtag guys. And no, at this point in Galilee, in the city of Capernaum, the crowds are thronging in on him. And here's what it says in Mark chapter 1, verse 29. As soon as they left the synagogue, they went with James and John to the home of Simon and Andrew. So Jesus was a popular speaker. And you can go to the city of Capernaum to this day, and you can see this ancient synagogue. It's right there, most likely the one that Jesus spoke to. There's also a house, they believe, that is the house of Simon and Andrew, that you can go in that house. And so he preaches, and then he goes to his friend's house. Simon's mother-in-law was in bed with a fever, and they immediately told Jesus about her. So he went to her, took her hand, and he helped her up. The fever left her, and she began to wait on them. Okay, what's going on in here? What's going on here is something you've all experienced. First of all, what's going on here is from time immemorial, from the beginning of Christianity, when people go to church and hear a sermon, afterwards they go out to eat. This is what's happening. Jesus preaches, they show up, mom's not cooking. Jesus is like, I can solve that, and he heals her. How many here are you going to go eat something right after this service? You're being very biblical. You're being super biblical. So when he took her hand, he helped her up, and the fever left her, and she began to wait on them. That evening after sunset, the people brought to Jesus all the sick and demon-possessed. The whole town gathered at the door. What is burnout? What is that sort of level of exhaustion that disrupts our peace and our happiness? Really what it is, it's performance pressure. It's when all of life seems to show up at our door. So Jesus preaches. I'm just going to tell you right now, it's exhausting to preach. He preaches, goes over, he's sitting down, and all of a sudden the word gets out. Think about life before hospitals, before urgent care. Think about life before Advil. Come on. all of a sudden the word gets out. If you go there, that guy's going to heal you. And the entire town shows up with both physical and spiritually desperate problems. The whole town gathered at the door. Jesus hesitated. He said, I'm too exhausted. Come back tomorrow. Jesus hesitated. He said, there's too many of you. Get an appointment. No, it says in verse 34, Jesus healed many who had various diseases. He also drove out many demons, but he would not let the demons speak because they knew who he was. That's a whole different sermon. And then here we have in the text, if you look in most Bibles, there's a paragraph that they put in here. It's not on the screen, and then a lot of times there'll be a heading, and I think it's a little unfortunate. You got to remember, all the paragraphs are added by the editors. All the headings are added by the editors. I don't think you should put a separation between those. Between all the chaos, all the performance pressure, all the demands on Jesus of praying for the sick and praying for the demon-possessed, it says this in verse 35, very early in the morning. While it was still dark, Jesus got up, left the house, and he went off to a solitary place where he prayed. Simon and his companions went to look for him. And when they found him, they explained, everyone is looking for you. They show up. I don't know if you're like me, but if I preached a really good sermon, then the whole town showed up at my door, just knocking, saying, we have expectations on you. We need you to perform. We need you to do this. And I just waited out in the middle of them, and I'm laying hands and praying and ministering and counseling. The next morning, I would sleep in. But Jesus doesn't. And when his buddies find him, they're like, the whole town's looking for you. Like, they love us back in Capernaum. Jesus, where are you going? Why did you sneak off? They got a buffet, man. You should see the scrambled eggs. Here's what Jesus says. Jesus replied, let us go somewhere else. Let us go somewhere else. To the nearby villages, so I can preach there also. This is why I have come. So he traveled throughout Galilee, preaching in their synagogues and driving out their demons. What's the point of this story? Why does Mark begin his gospel with this interesting little story about demands and performance pressure and burnout and crowds and Jesus getting off to a lonely place and the disciples saying, let's go back, and Jesus saying, no, what is the meaning of this? Here's the bottom line, and if you don't get anything else, get this. If Jesus needed time away with the Father to rest, how much more do you and I? If Jesus had a moment in his life where he said, listen, I got to get away from these crowds. I got to get away from this pressure. How much more do you and I? If Jesus had a strategy for burnout, how much more in the demands of life do you and I? There is no such thing. I'm talking to my friend Brian Carpenter, he runs a whole ministry for people that try to healthily manage their leadership to not have burnout. And he said, I don't really like the word burnout because it feels like an end. It feels like you're saying, I'm giving up. He says, I like talking about the idea of managing the pressures of life. How do you manage them in a healthy way? This is a perfect example of Jesus managing the pressures in an extremely healthy way. What are the causes of burnout that mean we have to manage it? Well, the first one, and if you're taking notes, I hope you write this down. The first one, and if you have this, really take note. The first one is life. Life. It's life. How many here, you're a parent, you own a human? You're in danger of burnout right there. I mean, you're responsible for another human's body and health and learning and expectations. And, when you're a parent, it always seems like one of your children has got to struggle. And then if two of your children got to struggle, then it just gets overwhelming. And it seems like every time one of your children has a struggle, your friends' children are winning doctorates and getting jobs as PhDs, and they're only in 8th grade, Just life itself creates expectations that make it very hard for us to keep our health and energy up. Here's another one, gift misalignment. This is where you get caught in a situation, I think this happens to all of us, where you're working outside of where you're really gifted, where your instincts are, what you naturally can do well. And sometimes God will give us a season like this so we can have more empathy for people that are good at those gifts. So when we see them doing those gifts, we'll go, yeah, I can't do that, and I love that person. But oftentimes if that goes on for too long and we're working in an area where we're not gifted, like for instance, if you made me into a counselor and I just had to listen to people, I'm not a listener. I don't know if you can tell. That gift misalignment creates some burnout. Relational drama, I've talked about this one before. I think this is one of the biggest causes. We think sometimes it's the amount of hours that we're working, but oftentimes it's the amount of drama that we have among the people that we're working with and our family members. When we become reconcilers, we actually get less drama. Here's one, and this is probably the most biblical, not probably, just is, lack of Sabbath. We don't have the right rhythm in life. We kind of think that rest and respite and times of just thinking and meditating and praying are optional, and they're not. The Bible is very clear. We have 6 days of work in us and 1 day of rest. One of the definitions I learned early on from the guys discipling me was that I needed one unintentional day in my week. One day where I was not making appointments. One day where I didn't have expectations. One day where I was not performing. It was all right if things came up and I had to do things. I didn't get legalistic about it, but I'm not filling every day in my calendar. I've got a day that is a day of rest. And here's one that I think ties them all in together, and it's just performance pressure. That idea that the eyes are on you, that idea that you got to go into that meeting, you got to go into that budget situation, you got to go into that relationship, you got to go into that medical problem, and it's up to you. If you can't get it done, your marriage, your child, your work, your job, all of that stuff could be a danger. I don't know if anyone else here, are you watching the Little League World Series? Do you guys watch this at all? It's on right now. I love this because it brings me right back. I'm 11 years old when I'm watching these things. And you just see this kid get up there and he's got the bat and everyone's watching him, or the pitcher's out there and 3 runs have scored on him and his whole face is melting down like, oh no, Pennsylvania scored 3 runs against us and we're going to lose. And I'm like, I just want to tell the kid, it's Little League, buddy. It's little. Little is literally in the name. But we don't feel like that in the moment, do we? We feel like all the eyes are on us. And so we slowly but surely get more and more exhausted. How did Jesus handle performance pressure? I'm not going to go too long because I have a big announcement for you at the end here. And it's not that too hard to get. And stuff you've heard me say before. But this passage is so genius. And the fact that Mark picks it at the beginning is so genius to me. Because first of all, if Jesus had to handle performance pressure, so do you and I. And the way he did it is so brilliant. Number one, he found a place with God every morning. Where's your place? It says he went out to a lonely place. When I used to read this passage as a young man, I would envision him kind of going into a cave or finding some little valley. But if you go to Capernaum, it looks like Galt. It looks like Galt. It's just sagebrush. And so you go and you see it and you realize that he was just sitting behind some big sagebrush out in the morning early. He went out and he found his place. Where is your place where you and God talk? Where is your place where you sit and you just receive that you've got a Father in heaven who loves you and he's got purpose in your life and he's got a promise for your future and he forgives your sins and mercy is new every single morning? Where is that place? For me, it's the right end of our couch in our living room. I go, I sit there, I get my iPad, I read the passage, I pray through the Lord's Prayer. My wife said to me about a year ago, she said, would you think about, getting a real Bible to study in the morning instead of reading off your iPad? Because sometimes the kids come down and they see you on the couch and they think that you're just checking the scores on ESPN. They don't think you're having time with God. And that really convicted me because sometimes I'm checking the scores on ESPN. No one's perfect. No one's perfect. We don't always have this little moment where God just restores us. But the practice of it, the health of it, of just saying, I'm going to get up and I'm going to go find that place with God. And I'm just going to be a child before you, Lord. I'm going to ask you to help me. And I'm going to cry out to you. And again, if Jesus did it, how in the world do I think I can skip it? The second one is he found a plan from God. And I love this. I think one of the biggest things we can do to mitigate stress and bring some order to our life is just know what God wants for our very next step? What's the plan? My wife and I, we were so blessed. We got to go to Italy for our 36th wedding anniversary, and we rented a car there, and it was a manual transmission car. How many of you know how to drive a manual transmission car? Yeah, I learned when I was a kid, and apparently it's not like riding a bike. Just doesn't, because it's really hilly there, and they just ride 6 inches on you, and it was so stressful driving around. And the difference between the first and third gear is the difference between will I live or will I die. That's the difference. And we got down to the final day, and it was like we're driving from downtown Rome to the airport. And, you know, in Italy, there's no such thing as lanes. There's no such thing as lanes. Just everyone, and there's 1,000 mopeds. And the mopeds are all ridden by this guy, Dr. Lucifer. And Dr. Lou is just weaving in and out. And so my wife and I, the night before we're going to the airport, we're like a football team preparing for the championship. We got like the Apple map out, the Google map out, we got the Waze out. We're talking to it, we're writing notes. She's the navigator, I'm the driver. I don't know how this happened because she's a better driver than me. And I'm telling you what, I am not doing any navigating. All I am doing is listening to the next instruction. And I told her, I said, listen, I don't need next turn right. I need the exact amount of feet. Because, you know, it can go like 0.2 miles to like 5 feet in 10 seconds, right? So I'm like, I need the lane. I need to when to go in the lane. And she's like, right now. No, don't go now. Don't go now. I never felt more close to God than we pulled into the rental car parking lot. They come to Jesus, and they're like, let's go back to Capernaum, man. We had some success there. We had some success. You were dynamite last night, Jesus. Sometimes we're just tempted to keep going back to what we did well before, and we get outside the plan. And Jesus said, let's go somewhere else. Let's go to the nearby villages. Jesus had met with the Father, and the Father had said, listen, just keep following my plan. Here's one of the things I just want to encourage you, man, is God's got a plan for you. I have to be real honest about this. He's not great at telling me all the steps. But when I quiet myself and I admit I'm tired and I listen, he'll give me a step or two. And that makes a big difference. Number one, he found a place. Number two, he found a plan. Number three, he renewed his purpose in God. And this is probably the most important one. Even if you don't have a place or a plan, if you get that purpose, you'll likely get the other two. That thing that's your reason, your why. When you got a why, you can almost make it through anything. Without a why, even the smallest problem can be such a burden, such a trial, such a burnout. I was in high school, and my sophomore year in high school, the wrestling coach came to me, Coach Gibson. He said, Curt, I noticed that, some of the boys pick on you, your brothers pick on you, you're the youngest, smallest in your family. He goes, I could teach you how to be tougher. I said, really? He said, yeah, you should come out for the wrestling team. And I was like, all right. He's a big guy, intimidating. I didn't want to say no to him. I thought that'd be good if I was tougher. So I say yes. I don't know what I'm getting into. Anyone here wrestle? Who wrestled in high school? Oh, yeah, okay, I can tell. I see it. Yeah. They say that soccer is the hardest sport. Baloney. Wrestling by far is the hardest sport. First of all, during soccer, you're allowed to eat as much as you want. You're not allowed to eat in wrestling. So I go into the gym, and the first thing is they take out of the box this uniform. They're like, put this on. It is skin-tight polyester. I'm not comfortable with this on by myself in my own bedroom, let alone wearing this in front of every adolescent girl I've ever had a crush on a Friday night out on a rubber mat. Then I get to practice, and they're like, you're gonna be wrestling with Mongo here. And I look at Mongo, he's got like 4 inches of hair on his back. He's like proof of evolution. And he sweats a lot. I don't want my own sweat on me, let alone Mongo's sweat on me. And Mongo is one of these humans that is particularly good at injecting pain into your life. I get out there one match one Friday night. I'm just miserable. I'm in a skin-tight polyester, and I'm being sweated on, and pain's being injected into my life. And I remember right before I got pinned, this guy's just going to pin me. And I remember thinking this deep philosophical question. Why am I here? You know, if you don't know why you're here, everything's a wrestling match. Life's a wrestling match, isn't it? You got to have that why. And I'll tell you, I wish Pastor Jason could give it to you because he's a great Bible teacher and he's a great pastor. I wish I could give it to you because as good as the pastor as he is, I'm a little bit better. I'm just a little older, you know. I wish your spouse could give it to you because she loves you, sir. I wish your spouse could give it to you because he loves you, ma'am. I wish your mom and dad could give it to you. I really do. But this is the way God set it up. He wants to tell you why you're here. And when you hear from him, you hear it different. It lasts. It goes further than anything your friends could say kind or nice about you or a loved one. When you hear a why from God, it's an eternal why. It's a sovereign why. And it won't make life perfect, and it won't make the exhaustion we all feel and the performance pressure we all deal with go away. But it'll be enough. It'll get you to the next minute. It'll help you take the next step in the plan. So here's my encouragement. It's super simple. Tomorrow morning, get up, find a place with God. Say, God, Jesus needed this, and so do I. Today, there'll be expectations on me. Some of them unrealistic. Some of them outside of my control. But God, I'm starting with you. You are my Father, and you're a good Father. Then just say, I'm open to your plan, God. You want to tell me this morning what next step to take? I'm open. You want to tell me at lunch? You want to tell me this afternoon or tonight when I lay my head on the pillow? God, all I'm doing, my whole job, my expectation on me is I'm opening my heart wide and say, God, show me your ways. Let your plan be my plan. And God, if you say something that's a little bit scary to do, give me the courage to do it because I trust you more than I trust myself. And finally, Lord, and most importantly, I know you know my purpose more than anyone else. Don't let me forget it. If I had it at one time, remind me. If I've lost it, bring it back. If I've never heard that still small voice, my ears are open, Lord. Tell me your purpose. I'll walk your plan because I love your presence. Can I pray for you? Lord, I pray for that extra tired person today. That person feels like they've been up to bat too much. They've been on that pitcher mound too long. Do what only you can do, Jesus. Do what the Father did for you so often. Come bring your peaceful presence, your comforting plan, and renew your purpose. We pray it in your name. And everyone said,